Welcome back, nomads, to our latest episode of Soon Parted. Today, I'm very happy and gratified to have the presence of Kirstie Flickinger. Kirstie is a content creator. She has a channel on YouTube with her that is named after her, conveniently enough. And I'm going to, in the comments, I'm going to post the link to that channel. And so what I'd like you to do right now is pause this video and go and subscribe immediately if you are not already subscribed to her channel. Kirstie produces anti-MLM content, and she has a particular story to tell because, like Mallory Grants, who we have also interviewed on Soon Parted, Kirstie used to be in an MLM. And unlike Mallory, she had actually achieved, Kirstie, a rather high rank, and we want to talk about that in this particular MLM. And so she has a perspective which I think is invaluable to share. And so with that long introduction, Kirstie Flickinger, thank you so much and welcome to Soon Parted.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, if you would be so kind, tell us about the circumstances surrounding your getting involved in Paparazzi, which was the MLM that you were in, one of the MLMs, but the MLM that we're going to talk about today.
Yep.
And describe for those who don't know what Paparazzi is, what this MLM sells.
Okay, so I was a part of Paparazzi, and that is $5 jewelry, basically. It'd be considered costume jewelry, like it's nothing fancy, no, expensive metals, materials, anything like that. It's made in China. So it's just jewelry. Everything is $5, which was a very key selling point because it's inexpensive. Some of it is cute, some of it not so much. But yeah, that's Paparazzi and how I got into it.
Yes, ma'am.
So I got started 5 years ago, and I had just had my son literally 1 month earlier. And I was up late one night scrolling Facebook, and I saw my friend selling this jewelry. And I was struggling pretty hardcore with postpartum depression, and I had lost a lot of friends at that time due to switching churches. And I felt very lonely, very isolated. I pretty much just had me and my family, and just struggling with postpartum. You feel totally isolated. So I saw her live on Facebook selling this jewelry and selling it well. Like I saw sold come on that Facebook Live. And I was intrigued, one, because I have an entrepreneur heart. I always wanted to own my own business, and I thought that maybe this was a way that I could do it without putting a lot of capital into it. And secondly, I just saw her talking back and forth with her customers, and that was really enticing to me because I didn't have relationships at that time. My friends just kind of disappeared on me. And so I felt like I was starting from ground zero. So I thought this was a way to connect with women, other moms. And I wasn't a jewelry person. Obviously, I'm not even wearing jewelry right now. But I knew that women love jewelry. So I felt like this was a common denominator to relate with these women. I don't know, use it as a way to find friendships, I guess. That was my main goal. That was my reason for joining. I didn't need money. I worked full time. I was on maternity leave, but I was going back to my job. My husband had a really good job. I didn't need money. I joined for friendship. So.
Okay. Tell us about that. So then you got involved, you signed up.
Yep. So I signed up, and let me think of the key details. So
what do you need to do to sign up for Paparazzi?
Oh,
this is a completely naive question because I don't know the answer.
No, that's okay. So all I did was I reached out to that lady, my friend, coworker from work, and I asked her some questions. I asked her hard questions because, again, Well, I have a husband who I knew he was going to ask me these questions. So I did my research first because when I went to talk to him about my desire to join, I knew he was going to ask, like, is this a legit thing? Is this a real company? Are you going to be able to sell the product? All of those things. So I asked her hard questions. I got answers that I was happy with. I didn't see any red flags. I looked on YouTube for reviews on paparazzi jewelry. No red flags 5 years ago. So she sent me the link to her website. I clicked join. I paid $99 for my starter kit. I put in my social security number, and that's it. That's all you have to do to get started is buy a kit, give your social, say I'm going to agree to all the rules, all the policies and procedures. And then I was given a consultant ID number, a website, and that's basically it.
How much does that kit cost to start?
My kit was $99. So they offer 3 different sizes. I purchased the small one because, again, I didn't know if this would be a successful venture for me. So I paid $99 because worst case scenario, I got 35 pieces of jewelry and I paid $99 for it. So you could pay $99, $299, or $499 if you were to sign up with Paparazzi today and get a different amount of jewelry with each kit.
Incidentally, do you know why the top package, well, actually, I shouldn't say this. If the bottom package were $499, that would make sense. It is not coincidental that the top package costs $499. And if you don't know why, I will tell you. I'm not trying to impress you or try to impress the
I'm not sure
with how much I know. But if your initial costs were more than $500, you would be a franchise, not any other kind of business opportunity under the FTC commission mandate statute. And as such, you would be subject, Paparazzi would, to rules that pertain to franchises. And MLMs are not subject to rules that pertain to franchises with respect to disclosure, income disclosure, competition, and involvement in litigation. And that they escape that by making at least one of these at least in Paparazzi, I think with the $99 exempts them, but there's some anyway.
Gotcha.
So that's 35 pieces of, my math is poor, so 35 pieces of jewelry, which you do what then? You resell them? Okay.
Yeah.
And
so
go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, so I can't do the math off the top of my head, but I want to say, like, the pitch was you get 35 pieces. If you were to sell all 35 pieces for $5, what is that, like $175 or something like that? So they're like, you pocketed $75.
I can't do math in my head, but I got a calculator.
Perfect.
35 times 5?
Yes.
That's 175. Okay.
Yep. So 175, you gave a $99 investment. Well, really, it's more than that because I paid tax and shipping. I want to say it was around 110. So that's their way of saying, okay, you can make a whatever $75 loosely profit off of this small kit.
All right.
So, but I personally, I ordered jewelry right away. So I purchased that kit. When you grab that kit, they send you whatever they want. I didn't know what was going to be in that kit. It's a mystery kit. So I chose to place another order and choose my pieces. And I did my first sale with the pieces that I purchased, if that makes sense. So I personally saw pretty good results off the bat. Again, it's $5 jewelry, not a big risk for the customer, not a huge risk for me. My first team member wanted to sign up with me, like, from that first party. So
we'll talk about recruiting in a second. What I'm trying to get a handle on here is you're making money. So you actually made more money than you spent from the get-go. Is that correct?
Yes. I feel like this is a personal conviction though, but so because I didn't need this as an income, I told myself and my husband that I would not spend any of our personal money. So if I wanted to buy jewelry, I had to sell jewelry. So because I wanted to buy jewelry, I was very motivated to sell it, right?
Okay.
Because I would not use my personal funds, which unfortunately most people cannot probably say in their experience. So I did make money, not just from recruiting, but from selling. I did pocket some. I don't know what the ratio would be. Well, I do actually. I could figure that out for you because I know how much Paparazzi sent me from my team, and then I know how much I reported to taxes. So 2/3 of my income, just off the top of my head, was from selling, and then 1/3 from my last year's taxes would have come from recruiting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Now, are you able to come up with these numbers because you kept you documented this? I mean, did you keep
Yeah, I
those
had to
statistics?
report it to for taxes.
Right.
So yep. So I knew how much Paparazzi sent me for my team, but then I knew how much I sold in jewelry, and then I knew how much expenses I had.
I'm playing a game in which in medicine is forbidden, which is called Guess What I'm Thinking. Instead, I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking. Did you
All
keep a
right.
spreadsheet? Did you have all of, did you actually see,
Very
did you
loose.
actually have someplace where in one place you could see how much money came in to your paparazzi endeavor and how much went out?
My spreadsheet was in the form of PayPal. So
Okay.
PayPal reports, I could pull that at any time, figure out how much money I had coming in. And then I used PayPal strictly for expenses as well. So I knew exactly how much was being taken out because I would use my PayPal balance to pay for jewelry and supplies, etc. And then I would use PayPal strictly to accept money as well.
Okay. So at all times you were not dipping into the Flickinger family funds. This was all you were making money. Okay. Doesn't matter
At
how
least
much.
enough to cover, yep, at least enough to cover the cost of more jewelry.
But beyond that, or you were just following?
Yeah, and beyond that.
Okay.
At one point this past year before I quit paparazzi, like I was the only one that had an income in my household. Long story short, my husband did not like his job. It was not a good fit. We moved to Wisconsin and he just needed a year off to figure out what he wanted to do and also just to heal from his previous experience, his previous job. So I needed to make money with paparazzi. So it was mainly this past year that I really paid our family, if that makes sense, where I didn't necessarily, okay, how do I word this? So the first couple of years, I would invest more back into my business, right? Like I would purchase more jewelry than I probably needed to because I didn't necessarily need the funds. I didn't need the overage. So I would purchase more jewelry. However, this past year, I did a really good job of saying, okay, I don't need the jewelry anymore. I'm instead going to transfer the overage into our checking account. I actually like allowed myself to pay our family, if that makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense. So what I hear you saying is that you paid for your living expenses. You paid paparazzi, paid for the place where you live. You're still in Wisconsin?
Yep.
Paid for your place in Wisconsin. You have 2 mouths to feed besides you and your husband. You have 3 mouths to feed, 4, including yourself.
Yeah.
And you paid for that as well?
Yes. But
Okay.
I will be fair that like paparazzi was enough to pay for my bills. However, we sold our previous house and we had like a nest egg, I guess you would say. And we had to dip into that sometimes because this wasn't sufficient. It was to fit our basic needs, but like we are remodeling our house and making an Airbnb, like those kinds of things. We would take from that nest egg, if that makes sense. So paparazzi, oh, go ahead.
No, that's it. So you've got Airbnb income as well from?
Not yet. No,
Oh,
we're
okay, you
in the
haven't done that
process.
yet.
Yeah, we're in the process
right.
of renovating. So, yeah, so that took from some of our funds too.
Okay, so this is fascinating to hear. So what I've heard you say so far, Kirstie, is that 2/3 of your paparazzi income was profit from sales.
Correct.
And 1/3 from recruiting bonuses, for want of a better word. I don't know what you call it.
Yep, team bonuses.
Team bonuses. Tell me about that. Tell me about the process of recruiting. How did you prospect? How many prospects did you get? I have a lot of questions about prospecting, but let me just start with
No.
those.
Okay.
How big did your team ultimately get?
I left with 99 people on my team. And I personally sponsored at least 60, I think 60 or 65 of them were personally sponsored by me. And then so the other 40, whatever, 44 were like grandbabies, I call them. So my sponsored team member sponsored somebody else.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, this is really inelegant. I was so worried about Kirstie's children running screaming into the room. Of course, your children don't scream like mine used to.
No, not they're perfect angels.
But while I'm recording, I'm writing a check to one of my employees. How many? How much? Okay. And so this is really inelegant. But I have to say, one of the things, and this is going to sound like BS, but the people on the Nomad network know this. I get a huge jolt out of writing checks to my employees. Most of them are first generation Americans who have children and families, and they rely on the income that my company pays them, and it makes me feel good to be able to do what I just did. But I interrupted our conversation. So you had a downline of 99, and that is impressive, I have to say. I'm curious, because this is a question that's come up in some of my content that I've written about, is what I refer to as churn, or the churn rate. The way that I define that is the turnover in a given unit of time. You may not be able to answer this. I have to say, let me preface by saying, I keep taking this out because I can't hear myself talk when I'm that when I talk to people who are in MLMs right now, they know what their churn rate is, but they don't want to tell me. I'm hoping you'll be able to tell me because you're removed from it now. So do you have some sense of what that was over? I mean, you were in for a long enough period of time that you might be able to get a sense of how many individuals you churned through in a year.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have like a specific number, but I can tell you
Get me in the ballpark.
It's awful. So I personally sponsored 46 in my 5 years. And when I left, I had 3 active.
Okay.
So the turnaround.
And how many of those were real grinders? How many of them were, I mean, of the people who you hired really?
All 3 of them.
All 3 of them did? Okay.
I mean, they're still in it. And they were probably what I would call my runners. The ones that like were just as passionate about what we were doing as I was.
And how did you prospect? How did you get recruits?
So my I guess what's the word? Procedure? No.
Yeah. Your standard operating procedure.
Yeah. The way that I did it was, it was pretty casual. I honestly, I just kind of, every time I went live, so I sold jewelry 3 to 4 nights a week for 2 to 3 hours each night. And so as I was selling jewelry, I was just saying, you could do this too. La di da di da. I sold 50 pieces tonight. That was, 50 times 225. You could have made this profit, like that kind of thing. I would just kind of put a plug in every time I went live. And then if I had a customer, this happened often, if I had a customer that spent so much money on jewelry, my heart, my conscience, I was like, I couldn't understand why they were paying full price when they could become a consultant and get it at a discount. So I recruited a lot of people by telling them, hey, I think you should sign up for the discount. And so you can get your jewelry at $275 instead of $5. Looking back now, though, they still bought from me. So it was kind of pointless. And there are many factors that I could go into if you want to know on why I think that is. But at the end of the day, a lot of people join just for the discount, but still purchase full price from me.
So they became consultants, but still purchased from you. That is odd. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, that we could try to unpack that, but I had another question which I wanted to ask. So you said you sold. If you know, if pretend that a Martian, a Venusian, has come down on Earth and has no idea what do you mean sell? I mean, I see supermarkets, I see stores. You sold online, but where is a question? Who would what was the platforms? What were, I guess, the platforms that you sold on?
Facebook. It was strictly Facebook. That's really the only social media platform that I'm familiar with. I'm trying
Okay.
to learn others, but
Mhm.
so I would go live on Facebook. It's kind of like this if it was just me, where I'm in front of my camera, I'm showing the jewelry, they say if they want it or not. I describe the jewelry
Mhm.
and I sell it. Like if I have 3, I can sell 3 of them.
Did you have a large social media following on Facebook?
I mean, my business page has about 1,200 people following me, so fairly good. But I
Was
started.
that before? No, I'm sorry. When you started out Paparazzi, how many did you have Did you have a lot of people already following you?
No, I probably had 500 Facebook friends,
How did
maybe,
you
which
accumulate 1,500 on a business page?
just by showing up. I don't know.
Okay.
So I started my business page with 0,
Mhm.
and every time I go live on Facebook, I would ask them to share.
That's
Um,
okay.
Hostess
Mhm.
parties were very prominent. I was kind of like noted like the queen of hostess parties. That's
Mhm.
mainly what I trained on. So I was really good at hostess parties means like you, for example, or your wife maybe has a party on Facebook. She invites her friends. I sell jewelry to her friends. I do giveaways, that kind of thing. But I was able to convert them into
Mhm.
followers on my business page and keep them, recurring
That
customers. So,
all that sounds really great. I'm going to share a screen in a bit because I've got I think I've got the the income disclosure statement. Now I've heard you say on your channel that you achieved a rather high rank in the company. I'm going to be sharing now. Hopefully you can see it. This is the 2021 Paparazzi income disclosure statement, where the ranks are on the left-hand column and various data in dollars are here. Now, which one of these ranks did you achieve? Because I actually don't know.
so I was producer,
You got
which is
to producer
yeah,
here.
yes,
Okay.
which is really only the middle of the compensation plan, which is
Mhm.
honestly embarrassing.
Why,
From,
why are you embarrassed by that?
well, no, I'm not embarrassed. I'm
Okay.
embarrassed at the percentage of consultants that are at that rank, and it's
Mhm.
only the middle of the compensation plan.
So,
Like this was a big deal. When you hit producer in Paparazzi, you were kind of like looked at a higher esteem.
mhm,
But my heart is just, it hurts my heart because that's only the top 1% of the company. And they're, it's
right,
the middle of the compensation plan.
correct. With an average monthly bonus of $2,000. Now, our colleague Jessica Hickson, who was in another MLM, It Works, as you know, um, has said, I have not had the pleasure of interviewing her, although I'm not going to stop trying to get her on, that the average monthly bonus was not necessarily a reflection of reality. Is without you don't have to tell me any gory details. Is that a reasonable number right there? That average monthly bonus for a producer?
I never got paid that amount. No.
Okay. Um, it's interesting. Very often, the proponents or the supporters of MLM speak very poorly, disparagingly, I must say, about income disclosure statements, about their not revealing the truth. And it's true that they don't reveal the truth, but it's not the same truth that they're talking about. It's generally these numbers, which are, look, the numbers that are shown here are not encouraging.
Right.
And I'm curious, had you, but let me take a step back, because if we had stopped the interview 5 minutes ago, I could have said, Kirstie, this looks pretty good. You've done pretty well, and you've put this. You've behaved in financially in a remarkably commendable manner and made money, why am I talking to an ex-paparazzi consultant? What happened?
Yeah, that's a good question. And for me, there was no time freedom. So it may have looked like I made money, but the amount of hours that I put in a day was less than minimum wage after I did a cost analysis. So for me, the amount of money that I was making was not worth the time that I was putting into it.
Was that expression time freedom dangled? I mean, I began so soon-hearted because initially, because there is a phenomenon out there in the world of capitalism that I refer to as the dangle, which is the dangling of money or a promise of freedom in front of desperate people. And you weren't in the best place you've ever been in your life, as you told me. We've all had bad places in your life, and it turns out that you were ripe, really, for the pickings, so to speak, from MLM. But I'm wondering if that expression, time freedom, was dangled in front of you. If you can remember back, it was 5 years ago. Mm. Or did you ever dangle that in front of anybody? Did you ever use the expression time freedom when you were doing your pitch?
I would say so. For me, so when I first started, time freedom was one of the reasons why I joined, because I just had a newborn and I wanted the community, but I also wanted to spend time with my son. And so the promise of time freedom, where you can work this in your little pockets of time, you can do it, whenever you want, you can schedule your parties whenever you want. That was dangled in front of me. Shortly afterwards, though, I learned that you have to do lots of parties very often, very frequent, takes a lot of your time. So I learned that very quickly. In regards to new recruits, I would tell them the same thing. You can do this in your pockets of time, because you could. So I was probably part of the problem too, by dangling that carrot of time freedom, because I was still pursuing that time freedom and I still believe that it was a possibility. One of the things that's really interesting is I felt like I held myself, this is all like retrospect, but I feel like I held myself back. Then two more levels from producer would have been considered elite, and Paparazzi gives you, perks from the company, whatever. And I saw how hard my elite upline was working, and I didn't want the life that she had. I could see how exhausted she was. I could see how run down she was. And so I feel like I didn't try as hard as I probably could have, because if I wasn't experiencing time freedom here at a producer and it got worse the higher I got, like, what was the incentive for me? Like, when does time freedom truly happen? And I just couldn't see that. So that's kind of when it started clicking for me, that time freedom is an illusion, and the higher you get, the less time you actually have. So
I think that's that's a gratifyingly honest answer, and I'm so pleased that you that you, first of all, that your eyes were opened and that you were able to see this. And what I'm also hearing you say, but I want to make sure that I'm not projecting, is that I'm hearing that while the words time freedom or financial freedom or whatever words in the pitch were coming out of your mouth, that there was also a small voice in your head saying, do I really believe that?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, you were not, I believe, because I think I feel like I know you because I've watched so many hours of your videos, but I mean, I think I know you well enough to know that you are not somebody who would willfully lie to people. And I don't think the majority of MLM reps willfully lie to people, but they hear stuff come out of their mouth that at some very deep level, they're saying, I'm not sure I buy that. I'm not sure I believe that, but there was at least some conviction. So there's a name for what we're calling this, and you've heard this. I think you've even discussed cognitive dissonance, which is this psychological unease that one feels when two competing thoughts do battle.
Mhm.
And I'm hearing that you were experiencing some of this. Is that a fair way to characterize it?
Yeah, definitely.
So in addition to time freedom, what else, what other dangles were, let's say, you don't have to name names or speak specifically or even mention yourself, but what kind, in the paparazzi pitch, what other sorts of things are dangled in front of prospects that might entice them, attract them to join?
So let me think. So paparazzi specific, a common one was like, for example, when I said that I would pitch to people that were spending a lot of money on jewelry to sign up for the discount. Like what I was seeing, so when I did that, right, I had all the right intentions because I would tell my husband often, again, I don't like to take advantage of people. So as soon as this cognitive dissonance happened, like I was done. And we can talk about that later. But in regards to customers, when they were spending, these customers were spending hundreds of dollars each week with me. And I'd tell my husband, like, I feel guilty taking their money, you know? So that's why I would offer them the opportunity to become a consultant. But the issue that I ran into, like, to answer your question, when you sign up for paparazzi and you get the jewelry at a discount, it was like sharks and minnows. Like it was a battlefield to get the jewelry that you actually wanted. So I would pitch this. I hope this makes sense because I'm trying to put my thoughts together, but I would pitch this opportunity with the hopes that they would save money. However, it was not a realistic hope, like now that I see it, because the odds of them being able to get the pieces that they actually wanted were very slim. And I did a video on that on my page explaining like why that was. But pieces would sell out in 2 seconds. And unless they were able to purchase like 40 or 50 of a necklace, they probably weren't going to get these necklaces, which is why they spent $5 with me on this necklace after becoming a consultant. And so that's kind of a carrot that I dangled unknowingly, that I was like bringing them into something that wouldn't help them, because they didn't end up, if they ended up signing up for the discount, they didn't end up using it. Most of them, they just came back and shopped with me. So that's one example. 2 is just financial freedom. Like they just promise that just keep working, just keep doing it, and eventually you'll be able to slow down and have the dream that you wanted, whatever that was for you. And it was usually financial, like the dream house or dream vacations or whatever it may be.
Did you pay for any training?
Yeah.
You don't have to, we don't have to go any details about that. What about conferences?
Yep. So I went to 2 in-person conferences. 2? Yes, 2. So when I joined, they were about to have a conference, but I just had my son, and so I didn't go. And then I did go the next year, and then the next year was the vid. And then I went to the one last year, the highly controversial, if anti-MLM community has covered a lot of that situation. But anyway, so that was the last one that I went to. So I went to 2 conferences, paid for your ticket. Your ticket was between like $200 to $300, paid for airfare, hotel, food, drinks. It would be about 5 days long. So you'd pay for 5 nights in the hotel, 5 days worth of food, drinks, etc. Jewelry while you're there, merch,
really? Yeah.
you know, paparazzi shirts, all of that was released at conventions. So.
And so in terms of, that's thank you for that, Kirstie. And there's a lot of, these are expenses that I think that are not often discussed, which end up on the ledger, right? They end up on they are business expenses. I trust that this was all 1099 income, and you did not incorporate like Kirstie Flickinger LLC for the purposes of having your, so you had to pay taxes as at the sole proprietor rate. How did that work? How did your Did you do this yourself or did you have a CPA do your
I
taxes?
had a CPA because I don't understand this
I
stuff.
said,
There's a bit of
I hire a
static.
CPA too, and I'm not smart enough or bold enough. And I own two businesses, and it's gotten too complicated, and I have employees. So, but so that 1099 meant that you had to pay taxes at the sole proprietor rate, which I understand
Mhm.
is high.
Pretty high. Yep.
And in addition, I've heard rumor. I want you to educate me about this because, and I'm not being coy. I actually don't know the way this works. There are some perks. There are some benefits that are supposed to accrue to certain very high ups in these companies, which in fact are appear on your 1099 as income. And I'm not sure if you ever got high enough to actually get stuck with any of those.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, then I'll have to find somebody. Maybe if Jessica ever gets come on my show, I'll be able to ask her about this, which comes as a shock to some people. There are these perks that you think are coming to you are actually income, which you're not told about. Okay.
Right.
All right. So this you did something highly unusual among MLMers in that you actually wrote down some numbers and calculated what goes in and what comes out, and found out this this sub minimum wage. That must have been a I don't know. I'll let you characterize it. What did your jaw do when you saw how much you were making per hour?
It was really painful.
I imagine.
Because I mean, like the cognitive dissonance was happening, right? So this all kind of started after convention of last year when just consultant stories were being exposed. And I'm a very compassionate, empathetic person. And so when these stories were being told of like their experiences or being terminated for ridiculous reasons, like that made me think about my experience. And at that time, Paparazzi was paying for my entire family's, income or whatever bills. Paparazzi was our only income. And so I had to figure out how much, because I felt like I had no time. I had no time with my family. And I'm like, this is worse than a 9 to 5, because at least at 5 o'clock, I can shut my brain off and I can spend time with my family. In Paparazzi and in MLM, in my opinion, that's not a thing. It's constantly running in your head and you cannot turn it off. So I weighed the pros and cons because my husband, brought up like we didn't have insurance, that kind of thing. So he like brought up getting a job. And of course I was anti-job because I'm like, no, I'm going to make Paparazzi work, But then those like wheels started turning and I was like, how much time am I actually spending? And how much money am I actually making? And so that's kind of what led to that. And
I've got two questions. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to scribble one down because, because this is all extremely valuable content that you're giving us, Kirstie. Remember who you're speaking to. I mean, this is an audience of entrepreneurs, so all of these things matter. There's a question about MLM expenses that I haven't been able to get an adequate fix on, and that is the money that you spend buying the product. Do you consider that as an expense, or is that something that you would say personal expense? I was going to buy this anyway. And if so, how did you reason either way? Whichever. First of all, which way did you do it?
Yeah.
Did you consider it a business expense, or did you consider I'm buying jewelry? I'm talking about stuff that you bought for yourself. Because I take it you bought some Paparazzi jewelry?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, well, I counted, if you want to know how much money I spent in Paparazzi in the past 5 years, I have that total. And it's the cost of my house, basically.
Holy moly. Now I live in an expensive, don't tell me. I live in an expensive part of the world. I live in Eastern Massachusetts. But buying a house in Wisconsin ain't cheap.
No.
Wow. Yeah. Holy moly. But all right, so to the question, I'm wondering, and I think that one of the ways that people get stuck here is that they may actually make a balance sheet and they say, well, no. That's a personal expense. That's not a business expense. That's not a personal, and would even subconsciously try to say, nah, I'm going to help the bottom line because that's not a, that's not a, I think it's a little different in Paparazzi because this is one where you actually have to buy a product and then, right? I mean, the stuff has to,
Correct.
the stuff actually does have to come to you, unlike a lot of MLMs where there is no inventory
Right.
loading. But I wanted to go back and ask another question because you brought it up. You pointed to the elephant, the 800-pound elephant in the room, which is insurance. And this is something, folks, nomads, all of us out here, we don't talk about this, but
Right.
we need to. Okay. Now, Liberty Medical Communications buys our business insurance, buys our health insurance. The Flickinger family. Are you both Flickinger? Is he Flickinger too? Are you, so you are the Flickinger? We'll call you the Flickinger family if you're not, because I like saying Flickinger. We're not getting health insurance, obviously, from Paparazzi. So, and you guys had kids. So I don't want to ask an indelicate question, but you guys were going bare, or you had public assistance, or how did?
Yeah.
Okay.
We could have gotten assistance, and we're fine now. We're covered now.
Great. Okay.
But and there's kind of a static. I don't know if it's from your headphones or.
I have lousy equipment. I told you about my production values.
No
I
worries.
warned you.
I don't have anything special. I have a ring light, a $10 ring light, and my cell phone.
I have less than that.
So yeah, so basically, like, obviously, if Paparazzi or an MLM is your sole income, you have to pay for insurance because they don't offer those benefits, and it was really expensive per month. So we just made the choice that we're just gonna see what happens and just pray that nothing bad happens to us. And so that's what we did for a little while. Probably wasn't the best decision, but that's where we were, and that's what it is what it is. Right. But we're covered now and we're fine now. But yeah, you don't get insurance, you don't get benefits when you're in your MLM, and when that's your sole income, you have to factor that into it, because if I were to, pay for insurance monthly, that needs to be deducted from my income, because technically that is an expense that I would not have had if I would have had a full-time job. My full-time job would have covered me, if that makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense. So I'm going to see how we're doing on time, which you've been very generous with, Kirstie. So let me ask you a question that I ask a lot of my guests here. Who is, well, let me ask it in a slightly different way. Who would be a good candidate, a good distributor for who? Give me kind of like your ideal, we call it an avatar. Who would be a really sort of ideal person for an MLM, who would most likely to benefit and least likely to be harmed? Yeah, have you even thought? Forgive me if this is I'm really stressing.
Yeah, no, I feel like I kind of understand the question. Like, I know who we were taught our avatar is. Like, I know who we're targeting without targeting, if that makes sense. Like, is that so? For me, it's basically a reflection of who you are, is kind of how it's taught upon, basically, because I can speak to people who are in the similar experience as I was. So my avatar was women who needed something for themselves because they're lost in momhood. And I believed that Paparazzi was that for them, because that's what Paparazzi was for me. Paparazzi was my escape from being a mom, from being a wife, from like my desire to own a business that fulfilled that desire. And so that's who I would essentially pitch it to, because I wanted them to have the joy that I had in Paparazzi, which eventually, like in my videos, like I explained, it was no longer a joy. It became a burden because of how much I had to do, how much work I had to do. I joined as a hobby, and it became a full-time plus some job. So that quickly changed, but that was my avatar.
Did you feel free to answer this or not answer this, because it is a personal question. MLMs are famous for damaging personal and familial relationships. I hope this did not happen to you, but if it did, what kind of effect did this have on your personal and familial relationships?
Yeah. So I don't feel like I didn't have anybody that told me like, hey, we're not going to be friends anymore.
Mhm.
However, I felt that I was becoming less genuine. And I'm, like I mentioned earlier, I'm very like in tune with my feelings. I'm a very compassionate person, and I didn't like who I was becoming.
Mhm.
So I felt like my relationships, paparazzi was the core of my relationships. If I were to reach out to somebody, it was something about paparazzi, whether it was about their order or it was about a potential order or becoming a team member, hosting a party. My relationship stemmed around paparazzi. And
Mhm.
like towards the end, that wasn't okay with me anymore. And that's why I left. But to answer your question, I didn't lose any friendships, not any
Cool.
that were very important to me anyway. I probably had some customers that got mad at me and left.
Mhm.
But I didn't burn any bridges.
Mhm.
And
And this was all, and what about your relationship with your husband and your children?
yeah, no, I think overall it was good. I have a lot of regret though, because a lot of my time was spent on paparazzi. And
Mhm.
like this summer, for example, so I own a small business now. I make my own jewelry.
That's
However, I
awesome.
decided I'm taking the summer off, and part of me is having a really hard time with this because I feel so guilty because
Mhm.
I was instilled that I have to keep working. You have to keep working. You have to keep working or you'll lose everything that you built. That's what I was trained for 5 years.
Mhm.
But the other half of me is like, I miss my family so much. And so this summer, I'm done. Like I'm taking it off and I'm making memories with my kids. And um our relationships, I don't think they were strained, but they weren't as fruitful or as they weren't as good as they could have been because
Got it.
I was either half present
Mhm.
because when I was with my kids, I was either working or thinking about work, and same with my husband. And I became a big ball of stress towards the end, especially when paparazzi was our sole income. I didn't know who I was becoming. Like I didn't like who I was becoming. I was
Yeah.
stressed. I was stressed all the time and on edge. And I'm genuinely generally a very relaxed, go with the flow person, but I was like so on edge because I was so stressed out that I felt like my family was maybe like just walking on eggshells with me sometimes because they didn't know what mood
So
to be in,
you
I guess.
you broke free in a very real and positive sense. I had forgotten the fact that you're actually a true entrepreneur now. So I'm going to send you a link to it's like I say, it's totally free and no obligation. I mean it. Nobody pays to be on the Nomad Network, but if you are going to make a go of it as an entrepreneur, there's some people you may want to meet. So I am going to send you a link about that. But the reason that we're having this conversation is because you have taken your experience and turned it into something genuinely positive, which is the content that you produce on YouTube. So tell me what's your goal with that? What kind of content do you produce and why do you produce it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm not gonna lie, I really struggled with this, with going on YouTube for a
Mhm.
couple of reasons. One, I don't like I don't like confrontation. If I don't like hate comments, like if you have something to say hateful to me, please just say it in your head. Like don't come at me because
Got
I
it.
take things very personally. And I knew that I was going to be the subject of hate if I went forward with this because obviously when you talk against an industry, people in that industry are going to take it personally. And so I knew that like animosity would come. But the reason that I decided to go forward with it, one, excuse me, I have a larger platform. I have a bigger following on Facebook. I have a lot of people that look up to me and a lot of paparazzi consultants that followed me. And I would feel like I'm doing them a disservice if I'm not telling them my true experience, my true thoughts, my true just truth of the industry that I learned over 5 years. And I'm the kind of person that if I think something is wrong, I'm going to stand against it. Even though I'm afraid of backlash, the pursuit of the truth, I guess, means more to me. And my mission, it has not changed. I still want women to see how worthy they are, how important they are, how loved, excuse me, I have hiccups, how loved they are. And in my opinion, the MLM industry totally takes all of their worth, all of their, I don't know how to explain it, but
You've
MLM.
explained it articulately. Give
Okay.
yourself a little credit.
Okay.
It was very well said.
I want women to know that they don't deserve this treatment. And so that's why I'm speaking out with the possibility of hate. So
I am going to post a link to your channel in the comments, and strongly recommend. The quality of Kirstie's content is really quite high. She has I mean, I cannot compare production values. She has production values, unlike yours truly. What you've said, Kirstie, let me just say that the work that you're doing is enormously valuable. We especially here on the Nomad Network, appreciate the value of human capital, and it hurts us. It hurts our hearts when human capital is wasted.
yeah.
And that could otherwise be usefully channeled into pursuits that add value to the world, such as you're doing right now, with not only with your YouTube channel, but with your own jewelry business, about which we wish you the most success. So Kirstie Flickinger, thank you for your contributions. And with that, we'll say goodbye and thank you for appearing on Soon Parted.
Yep. Thanks for having me.